women weren't allowed to serve on juries or as witnesses in American trials. In some states until into the mid-20th century, which is amazing to me. But would women have been taken seriously as witnesses in a time when they weren't taken seriously anywhere else? So under the rules of the law.
Which may have even exacerbated the whole claim that this was real, because on top of that, you've got women who are your witnesses.
Yeah, but the Lord isn't actually sexist.
We imagine is that only the witnesses see the plates, the 8 witnesses touch and handle the plates, but actually while the plates are wrapped up like this, it doesn't seem like there's any provision against someone moving them around. Joseph Smith's sister Catherine, for instance, talks about moving the plates while she was cleaning, about running her finger along the edge of the plates through the cloth and hearing a rustling like a kind of thick metal.
Well, what did we hear from Lucy Mack? What was her deal?
Well, Lucy Mack Smith had experiences, for example, with the Urim and Thummim, and or with the breastplate. She talks about seeing it glint through the cloth a little bit and feeling it underneath and saying it felt like the breastplate that would have belonged to an unusually large man. And so these things are the thing that strikes me about them is the sheer mundaneness of them, that they're not, in mystical transports or having some exalted religious experience. They're just feeling something through a cloth, the way anybody would ordinarily feel something through a cloth, or lug a heavy object in and put it in the bed or something like that. The group includes women, several women. You don't have women among the 3 and the 8. I've wondered why sometimes, and I thought, well, for one thing, women weren't allowed to serve on juries or as witnesses in American trials. In some states until into the mid-20th century, which is amazing to me. But would women have been taken seriously as witnesses in a time when they weren't taken seriously anywhere else? So under the rules of the law.
Which may have even exacerbated the whole claim that this was real, because on top of that, you've got women who are your witnesses.
Yeah, but the Lord isn't actually sexist, and so among the informal witnesses who have, between them, they have most of the same experiences that are distributed among the 3 and the 8. I mean, they see the plates, they
heft the plates,
all those sorts of things. But this includes women. So women were included as witnesses. If you want women, you've got women who are testifying along with the men.
It's a much more diverse collection of people that have different experiences that often don't serve in high positions within the church and don't have as much of an opportunity to bear their testimony and their witness, but nevertheless, when they are asked, do consistently say, this is what I saw, this is what I felt, this is what I believe.
We were talking about informal witnesses, and it seems like there was one other story that we kind of left on the table.
Yeah, and it absolutely belongs right here, and that's the story of Mary Whitmer, who is the wife of Peter Whitmer Sr. She was a little bit, I think this adds a really human quality to it, she was irritated, I think, because as so often happens, the men are doing the important work, and the women are left doing all the housework and the chores. People are constantly coming by to visit and to gawk and see what's going on. And she has to feed them. She has to do all the milking of the cows. Then one day, apparently, she sees Oliver and Joseph. They go out and they're skipping rocks on a pond or something. And she says, well, if they can do that, if they have time to skip rocks on a pond, they can darn well help with milking the cows. And so she wants to throw them out. And, I'm sick of this. And it's at that point that this messenger comes and says, basically, you've been under a lot of stress recently, and it's only fair that you should have a view of the plates.
This woman created this family that the Lord picked to be the witnesses of the Book of Mormon. This is really impressive. Mary Whitmer is really impressive, and we need to make sure we know and everybody else knows about her witness.
Yeah, I don't know that a lot of people have heard that before.
No, but it's an impressive story, and because it happens when she's not expecting it. She's not on her knees praying for a sign or anything like that. She's in the midst of the most prosaic kind of farm activity, and this happens to her. And apparently she never complained after that.
We not only have a dozen witnesses of the Book of Mormon, but we have witnesses of those witnesses. So Oliver's wife is characteristic of this. Hiram Smith, a woman named Sally Parker, writes this really beautiful letter in 1838 where she says, Hiram Smith passed through where I live and he bore his witness. He said, I lifted with these hands, I saw with these eyes, the Book of Mormon plates. She also, Sally Parker mentions, I lived next door to Lucy Mack Smith in Kirtland for 8 months, and I talked to her lots of times, and she told me about when the plates were in their house. So you've got witnesses upon witnesses, character witnesses, you might think. One of my favorites is Rebecca Swain Williams, the wife of Frederick Williams. Rebecca converts to the church when Oliver Cowdery and his companions pass through northeastern Ohio on their way to the west. And we know about her story because she writes a letter to her father. When she tells her parents that she's joined the church, she's disowned. They say, we're never going to talk to you again. And Rebecca writes back and says, oh, yes, you are. I'm not, you can forsake me, but I'm going to still write you letters. Yeah. I love you. And by the way, you got to know about this stuff. This is the greatest thing I've ever heard. And she bears her witness of the Book of Mormon. She hears back from brothers and they say, well, we've heard that these witnesses are rascals, you know. And she writes back and says, well, I know them. I talk to them. Believe me, they're credible guys. Sally Parker writes, and she says, hey, I'm writing at a time when a big chunk of the church is disaffecting. And she says, not me. I know too much. I can't because of the Book of Mormon. So these are people who are making high stakes decisions about the Book of Mormon. Thomas Marsh comes out from Boston to upstate New York, just drawn by the Holy Spirit, not sure why. He's looking for something from God, and meets a woman who says, hey, have you heard about the Gold Bible? No, what's that? He makes his way to Palmyra, meets Martin Harris at the press, and gets a signature. He gets a page of 16 sheets of the Book of Mormon, becomes converted by it. Lesser known is that his sister also joins as a result of her experience with the Book of Mormon. And then in that tough Missouri period where Oliver Cowdery and David Whitmer find their way out of the church, so does Thomas Marsh. And not Anne, though. Not Anne, right? She says, hey, I know the Book of Mormon's true, and I'm not, the implications in Anne's way of thinking about it are too great. I'm not, Oliver and David can both say, I know the Book of Mormon's true, but I'm so upset, or I've been so offended, or I've been not appreciated enough that I'm getting out. Well, Anne says, I just can't do it that way.